This week's episode is a bit of a departure from some of the themes that I've gone over in the last few videos that were a lot about eating behavior and just weight regulation in general. Remember that in the new weight paradigm, you always are in charge and you always get to choose how you want to live your life, how you want to express yourself, and whether, again, you get to choose whether you want to take a weight-based approach to your health or not. And if you do want to take a weight-based approach to your health, and even if you don't, eating healthy is something that is kind of core to promoting health in general. But so is physical activity. So is being active. Being active when it comes to weight regulation is very, very important for maintaining the healthier weight that you maybe want to get to. It's so this is not a lot of people don't realize this, but exercise is actually so as far as weight loss goes. Usually achieving a caloric deficit through eating fewer calories is more effective for weight loss, but exercise is fantastic for almost pretty much every single measure of physical and arguably mental and social health as well. Exercise is 100% one of the best things you can do for yourself. Yes, it helps to manage weight. It's especially best for weight maintenance, not so much weight loss, but of course it does help with weight loss too, because it can help you get into a caloric deficit. But it is amazing for overall health, weight maintenance, and just things like blood glucose regulation. Okay, so physical activity, exercise, and I'll differentiate between those two things. Amazing for health. I'll get more into that a little bit later. But just because we know that exercise is good for us doesn't mean we're actually going to do it. So that is today's topic, is okay, yeah, exercise is great for health. Sure, it helps with weight maintenance and weight management. Sure, I know I should do it, but I can't do it. How do I actually find the motivation? How do you find the motivation and the sustained motivation to move your body regularly in a way that promotes health and ideally makes your life better? That is the goal of today's episode. So welcome to the New Weight Paradigm. I am Deanna Bedoya, and I am here to lead you into a newer relationship with your body where you prioritize self-worth, where you know that you're already worthy, and yeah, maybe from this place of worthiness, you want to change your physical activity and your eating behaviors, maybe for weight management, maybe not. That's totally up to you. And we do so, we find these new behaviors and adopt these new behaviors in a way that actually fits into our lifestyle and that works for us and that makes our life better. So that's part of the goal of this podcast video series. If you don't know me, Deanna Bedoya, senior lecturer at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC, Canada, and I'm a weight educator and coach as well. Anything else I want to say about that? Yes, if you like these videos, this YouTube, please hit subscribe, leave a review, give me 5 stars if you feel like it. Write a review if you can. And on YouTube, if you want to hit subscribe or the little ding button, there's a little bell button that tells you when my videos come out. That is all really helpful. It's some external motivation to help me keep doing these things, but as I'll talk about in a bit, my motivation for actually doing these videos is a lot more internal these days, and that's why it's actually been kind of easy and fun to do these videos too. But external motivation does help too. So I'll get into differentiating between those two in a second. Okay, so today's video is how do you stay motivated to make physical activity, to make exercise a consistent part of your life so you get all the crazy benefits that exercise/physical activity leads to. Now, I keep saying exercise/physical activity, or I keep using these terms a little bit interchangeably, but just for clarity, just to differentiate between the two, physical activity is like a catch-all term. I call it the umbrella term. Physical activity is any movement, voluntary movement of the body that burns calories. So just moving around your house, or taking your dog for a walk, or brushing your hair technically is physical activity, right? Some of those are going to burn more calories than others, but it's movement, it's voluntary movement of your body. And then we can break up physical activity into different forms of physical activity. So for instance, you get physical activity through your job, maybe if you're, for instance, a wait person, or like you're a server, you're a restaurant server, or you work in some sort of factory, or you just need to move around a lot in a day. There's something called occupational therapy. Occupational physical activity. There is just like your day-to-day movements, which we call like active living. There's the activity we do for fun, like leisure activity. So maybe that's like dancing. And then of course there's sport, which is competitive. But exercise is a form of physical activity that's like planned and structured. And the goal of exercise is to promote fitness. So one of the first things I want to do today is reframe how we look at moving our bodies. When we use the term exercise, a lot of people have like this knee-jerk reaction to the term exercise because it feels like laborious. It feels like hard to do. It feels like, I have to go to the gym for 30 minutes or an hour, and I have to go on the treadmill, and I have to lift weights in a particular way, and like it feels very like I don't want to do that thing, and it feels like too structured almost. And I'm not dissing the gym. The gym is awesome. I'm very pro gym, but that's not the only way to get physical activity in your life. You can get physical activity in your life in all sorts of freaking ways, and you can be super fit and get all the benefits of physical activity without ever getting into a gym. So please know that you get to use the term for movement, and maybe you just use the term movement that aligns most with you. The term exercise, even maybe the term physical activity, might be a bit stigmatizing to you, or it might just put you off. So find a term or a way of looking at this concept where it feels a little bit more accessible. And if that's just movement, then that is a-okay. Exercise usually means that we're trying to promote fitness, and that's great, and that's something that can promote health for sure, but we can also get those benefits even if we name it something different. So my point is, if naming physical activity exercise feels really like, I don't want to do that, then just call it activity, or just call it movement, or just call it whatever it takes to feel a little bit more like your own thing, because it's all about finding your own thing. Okay, so now we know exercise. What do I mean by motivation? So motivation, I have just like the Google definition of motivation up on the screen on YouTube, and it's like the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. The general desire or willingness of someone to do something. So it's the thing that makes you do, right? So it's that thing, which I'm going to argue is within you, that I can't give you. Motivation is that thing, that concept, that construct that makes you do the thing, right? And doing the thing, what do I mean by the thing? In this case, I mean physical activity, I mean movement, I mean exercise. But motivation could also be motivation to like clean your house or motivation to, eat a certain way, or motivation to get your work done. So today we're talking about exercise motivation. So what is it? What's that thing? That thing that keeps me coming back. That thing that actually makes me want to exercise, makes me want to move, makes me want to be active, right? It's that willingness, that desire, that reason for acting in the way that I might necessarily want to act, okay? So we understand exercise, we understand motivation, and the reason it's so important to talk about motivation when it comes to exercise is that motivation for exercise helps promote the number one predictor of success when it comes to exercise. And what I mean by success, well, to be successful, to get the health benefits of exercise, to get the mental benefits of exercise, to get the emotional benefits of exercise, to get the physical benefits of exercise, to get the weight-related benefits of exercise, the number one thing that you need to do is to keep doing it. It's something called adherence. So you can exercise, you can move your body in a certain way for a week, and yeah, maybe you'll get the enjoyment benefits of that and the immediate mental health benefits of that. But if you don't keep that up, those benefits don't just stick around, right? If we want to see long-term changes in our health, long-term changes in our mental health, long-term changes in our physical health, long-term changes in our quality of life, we have to keep doing the thing. We have to keep doing the thing that we know is good for us, okay? And so if we can figure out what's actually going to motivate us to participate in that thing that we know that's good for us, then that can help us get all the benefits we need to get. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so that said, in one of my many hats, I teach health promotion at Simon Fraser University, and I remember the first time I was teaching this class, I was like looking at the slides of the former professor, lecturer Stephen Brown, and in one of his slides, it said something like, I can't motivate you to do anything. Like, motivation cannot be given to someone else. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? I was like, other people have motivated me to do things in the past. I know that like sometimes there's something external that makes me want to do something. But the more I explored this concept, the more that I have to say that I fundamentally agree with this, that I actually cannot give you motivation. Motivation is a personal and internal concept in the way that if I'm talking about motivation like sustainably. Like maybe I can motivate you to get something done today. Maybe today I motivate you to exercise. Maybe today I motivate you to watch this video, to engage in a particular behavior. But if you want to do something sustainably, if you want to actually change your behavior for life, that motivation, that desire to act in a certain way has to come from within, has to be a personal thing. We cannot keep looking for external reasons to engage in these behaviors and expect them to be sustainable. Don't get me wrong, they can help us get started. And fair enough, for some people, external motivators do work. But at the end of the day, I can't change your behavior. I can't do that. That's what's frustrating about being a coach sometimes, is like, I can't make someone eat a certain way. I can't make someone move their body in a certain way. I can't make someone think differently necessarily, right? I can guide them. I can give them suggestions. I can make them, maybe, consider things different way or reframe things. But at the end of the day, that motivation to keep going in a particular direction and to and to adopt these sustainable behaviors, that's gotta come from within. So that's really what we're going to do today, is we're going to use a couple of lenses to examine how do we actually find this internal motivation. And news flash, it is not something that is like A, B, C, and D. Do A, B, C, and D and you're going to have motivation, right? Do A, B, C, and D and you're going to exercise for the rest of your life, right? I can't tell you, this might be frustrating, thought I was going to tell you how to do everything, but I can't tell you how to keep exercising for life. You have to figure that out yourself. But I'm going to give you a couple lenses that are going to help you maybe think of motivation a bit differently and try to identify what are going to be the factors that are going to help you stay motivated to do the kind of things that you want to do for your own life. What would be a waste of both of our times is for me to go over all the benefits of physical activity, and there's a fucking crazy amount of them. There are so many damn benefits to movement, consistent movement, moving your body regularly. It's the research is so ironclad on the benefits of physical activity. But it would be a waste of my time and yours for me to just list those out, although I'll sprinkle them in a little bit here and there, right? This is something I also learned when I first started teaching like first year health. And I would be like telling people like, all right, here's the benefits of physical activity. Here are the benefits of eating fruits and vegetables. Here are the benefits of not smoking. Here are the problems with drinking. I could tell people all this information, but that doesn't mean that they're actually going to change. Knowing what you should do doesn't mean you're actually going to do it. For instance, right now, if you want to know what you should or what is recommended, kind of as a base level of physical activity, what is recommended is 150 minutes per week of what we call moderate to vigorous physical activity. So activity that like gets your heart rate up. It doesn't have to be like pounding out of your chest, but something that like you feel you have to work a little bit harder at. Okay, so 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity, and you can do that in as little as 10 minutes at a time. So for instance, I live at the top of a big hill and it takes me 10 minutes to walk up that hill. That 10 minutes that it takes me to walk up that big hill counts towards my 150 minutes. So if you haven't heard this recommendation, you might have heard the recommendation like get 30 minutes of physical activity 5 times a week, which actually adds up to 150 as well. But even if, let's say, you haven't heard either of these before, you know probably that getting regular physical activity is important, right? And maybe, 30 minutes 5 times a week, that's something that you've heard before. But even if you do know that, and even if, let's say, the majority of the world knew that, and the majority of the world, and if we just look at industrialized nations, about 80 to 85% of people aren't getting the minimum amount of physical activity required for health benefits. So knowing that you should be active isn't enough to be active. Knowing that exercise is good for you isn't enough to be motivated to exercise. And this all sounds like, that's great, Deanna, but what do we actually do about that? That is what we're getting to. So you know that you should be active, but how do we actually make that part of our life? So I'm going to use 2 lenses today to approach this concept. And both of these lenses come out of psychology. And more so, they're out of like behavioral psychology, like why do people act the way they do? And both of these lenses are kind of this newer wave of understanding human behavior and actually, creating interventions that can perhaps help people to sustainably stay motivated. So I'm going to talk about something called self-determination theory, which was originally proposed by someone named Richard Ryan, and Edward Deci in 2000. And I'm also going to talk about something called acceptance and commitment therapy. And so it's often used like in psychology, like if you go to see a therapist, like they might use this acceptance and commitment therapy. But it also has a role or has a place in behavior change too, because it actually can look at, the psychology of what actually can help people change. So this actually started as something called comprehensive distancing by Stephen Hayes in 1982, but both of these concepts have evolved a lot, and especially acceptance and commitment therapy. This is one of the main types of psychotherapy that's used in like modern psychotherapy, right? That and cognitive behavioral therapy. Those are big ones. But I'm going to use these 2 lenses to help us understand motivation. So that's, again, big picture. How do we stay motivated to exercise? How do I actually regularly choose exercise over sitting on the couch? How do I choose exercise? How do I choose movement over watching a movie? How do I choose physical activity over, whatever else priorities you have? Okay, so that's what we're going to look at today. So I want to start by talking about this self-determination theory and how it applies to motivation to exercise. And what basically self-determination is about is it talks about our innate desire to flourish, right? Our innate desire to like grow and develop and be better and, kind of a bit of this growth mindset aspect, right? So it's about making the choices and finding the motivation, and we'll get to the motivation part of this, finding the motivation to make the choices that are ultimately going to be better for us. And what's key to self-determination theory is this concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, which is something key we need to think about if we are going to build an exercise practice, a physical activity practice, a movement practice that is going to become part of our lives and sustainable so we can get all those benefits we want to get out of them, okay? So in self-determination theory, what's really key is to focus on intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivators can get us started, and it's not that they don't hurt, they hurt. The extrinsic motivators are great, but they're often not the best things to focus on if we want to talk about long-term sustainable behavior change, okay? So if you're looking at this on YouTube right now, you're going to see a model that kind of summarizes some of the key aspects of self-determination theory. And it's from a paper called Motivation to Learn, an Overview of Contemporary Theories by David A. Cook and Anthony Artino Jr. And the reason I like this particular conceptual model is it gives us this continuum. It outlines the continuum from not motivated at all, amotivation, like I don't want to do anything, leave me the F alone, to motivated by external factors, right? Like you're motivated because you feel guilty if you don't, or you're motivated because maybe you'll lose weight if you do a particular behavior, or you're motivated by the praise of other people, okay? Those are all extrinsic motivation. They're external motivators. So one side of the continuum, not motivated at all, amotivated. Kind of in the middle is something called extrinsic motivation. And then what we would argue in self-determination is that more of a place that is going to be more motivating and continuously motivating is this place of intrinsic motivation, where you are motivated by your internal states, by your internal desires, by things that are important to you, right? So it's not just about, let's say, weight loss, which is an extrinsic motivator, right? And don't get me wrong, that is motivating, but the problem with being motivated by weight loss is what happens once you lose that weight. What happens when you lose that weight? Let's say you wanted to lose 20 pounds and you lose 20 pounds. Where does your desire for exercise go? If you were only exercising to lose weight and now you've lost it, right? So maybe it's changing to maintaining that, but it's probably not going to be as strong. Okay, that's an extrinsic motivator. An intrinsic motivator is more like you're exercising because it feels amazing. You're exercising because after you exercise, the rest of your day feels better. You feel fresh. I feel, when I exercise, it changes my day. I immediately feel better. I never regret a workout. I never am like, man, I wish I hadn't worked out. I always feel better. And that's an internal, intrinsic motivator that keeps me coming back for it. Okay? Doesn't mean I don't rely on extrinsic motivators. I do have those in my repertoire as well. Okay? But if I'm not enjoying it, intrinsic motivator. If I don't feel better, intrinsic motivator. If that exercise doesn't align with my values, intrinsic motivator, I'm less likely to keep doing it. Okay? So extrinsic motivation, these, like I said, could be like being motivated by guilt. You feel guilty if you don't exercise. You feel that other people judge you if you don't exercise. You feel that you're in a larger body and that maybe you don't feel as accepted by society because you don't exercise, you're in a larger body and you don't feel accepted by society, right? Those are all extrinsic motivators. And like I said, they're great to get you started, maybe, or they can help you get started. But if we're talking about long-term, successful, sustainable behavior change, if you want to make physical activity, if you want to make movement, exercise part of your life, you gotta find it from within. Which again means that I can't tell you how to be motivated, right? But I can guide you to figuring out what is intrinsically motivating about exercise. And quite honestly, you could apply this to anything else. You could apply this to eating well, or spending time with your family, or drinking more water. You can apply it to all sorts of different health behaviors. But the point I'm trying to make is we really want to focus on these intrinsic motivators. So in self-determination theory, they talk about three different constructs that can help us move from more of extrinsic motivation, right? Or no motivation, amotivation, right? From extrinsic, external motivators to these internal motivators. And these three constructs are relatedness, competence, and autonomy. So let me talk about those a little bit more and give you some things to think about with those. So relatedness really refers to how you relate to other people. So what does that mean? So how can you, engaging in physical activity, how can you, moving your body more, help to create connections in your life? Because connections are very, we need to connect. Humans love connection, even animals love connection. My cat is, obsessed with me. She wants connection from me or whoever else tends to give her food. Okay, we need connection as a species. And one of the things that's very intrinsically motivating to help us change behavior is how that behavior can help us connect more with others. So for instance, is there a way for you to find enjoyment in exercise because you do it with someone else, right? Is there a person that, because you guys go for walks together, because you go for a swim together, that helps build your connection with each other? Something else with relatedness is, can you find a place where you feel like you belong when it comes to movement? So if you are someone that feels that you need to go to the gym, and you go to a gym and let's say you don't regularly go, it can feel like you don't belong there. Gyms are often not very set up to welcome in new people, especially if their bodies don't fit into a particular societal construct. So I would actually not recommend starting with the gym, like a public gym, for someone that doesn't feel like they perhaps belong there, or doesn't feel like they're seen there and valued there. Or I would recommend finding a gym where you do feel like you can just show up as yourself in your current body. Okay? Because if you go to a particular area where you don't feel like you belong, right? Where you feel like it's all bro workouts, and nothing wrong with bros, but working out a little too hard, grunting a lot, working super hard on the machines, and all that's amazing, then maybe that's not where you're at and you don't feel great seeing that. Okay, so that might be a place that is not right for you, but can you find a place where you feel secure, where you feel included, where you feel seen, where you feel that you can show up as you truly are? And then why that is intrinsic motivation is because it's I can go to this place and feel like myself. I can go to this place and feel like I belong. Okay? And if the gym you are going to or the place you are going to doesn't help you feel like you belong, that is something that is probably not going to be sustainable. Okay? Another aspect that can promote this transition from extrinsic motivators to intrinsic motivators is this concept of competence. Something we also talk about is self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to do certain things, and how competent which relates to how competent you might feel in things. So, for instance, let's say pick on the gym again. If I go to the gym and I see all these like Nautilus machines, those machines that like, not just free weights, the other kinds of machines that look very technical. And I see these machines and I'm like, I have no idea how to use these things, right? That instantly I feel like, well, first of all, I would feel probably a bit of shame, right? That, oh my gosh, I'm not the kind of person that can use these machines, right? So I would not feel competent in that particular area to start with. And you can build that competence by maybe working with someone, sure. Or again, maybe you start in a place where you already feel competent or you can build your competence. So for instance, a great place to start is with walking. Please never underestimate the fantasticness of walking for overall health, for social connections, for mental connections, for like the benefits of physical activity. Walking is one of the best forms of physical activity as far as like managing the risks of exercise, because you can injure yourself, and like the benefits. Okay, walking is a great place to start, and it's a place where a lot of us can start. Now, that's not everyone. Not everyone is able to walk, but there must be something. Even if someone's perhaps has a mobility issue, there are also machines that we can use that involve our arms instead of our legs as well. Right? Is there a place you can start where you're going to start from a place of feeling at least okay, right? Because we always want to start from fundamental self-worth, okay? And can you build that competence too? If we start too high, like if we start pushing our bodies too far right from the get-go, then there's a chance that we're going to feel really shitty because we're not going to be able to do it. And then because we're not going to be able to do it, that's not motivating at all. And again, we don't want to use the guilt of like, I can't do this, so I have to push harder. Well, maybe that does work. It kind of depends on the person, right? But for a lot of us, feeling shame or guilt around our competency isn't motivating us to keep going. So a question for you is, where can you start from? What is something that you know that you can do? You are 90% sure that you can do. Right? And then, you can challenge yourself from there, right? If you can only walk 10 minutes right now, maybe after a couple weeks of doing that, you try to walk 13 minutes. You try to walk 15 minutes. And your body's actually set up to do that. Once it's capable of doing something, then you can start challenging it, like maybe a 10% challenge above what you're currently doing, so you can start building more fitness so you can become even more competent in that area. And then another thing that promotes this intrinsic motivation is this concept of autonomy, right? Of freedom of choice. And I think that's one of our biggest issues these days with our obsession with like optimal exercise protocols. What drives me a bit crazy about that is that it doesn't always give people a lot of like freedom of choice. We think that we have to optimize exercise in this particular way to get the maximum benefits of it. And yeah, maybe to get maximum benefits, you have to follow particular protocols, but a lot of times we just want people to get moving more. And focusing on optimization isn't necessarily allowing a lot of freedom of choice and a lot of like figuring out what's best for you. You need to figure out what's best for you. That's such a key part of the new weight paradigm, is individualization and joyful experimentation as part of that. Can you figure out like what do you want to do? Right? Exercise is good for you. You want to do it. Then what do you really want to do? Or what do you think you can do? Don't let someone else tell you what form of physical activity, what form of exercise, what form of movement is right for you. You have autonomy in this matter. You get to choose what type of movement works for your body. And start from a place that you're 90% sure that you can actually start. And you can build from wherever you can start, but you need to start from a place that you're going to feel competent enough to get started, right? And ideally, if you can find a form of physical activity that maybe promotes confidence or maybe is in a place where you feel like you belong, or just helps you relate more to other people, these are things that can be really strongly internally motivating, so you keep actually engaging in that behavior. So to kind of summarize some of the things I'm talking about with this self-determination theory of exercise, is I want to kind of move away from some of these external, extrinsic motivators. So things that maybe help get you started, but are not necessarily going to keep you motivated to exercise, include wanting to look a certain way or not wanting to look a certain way. And why that's an extrinsic motivator is chances are your beliefs around what you should and shouldn't look like are some sort of a societal construct, right? They're based on societal values. They're external to you. So don't get me wrong. There's nothing like, it's okay to want to look a certain way. I'm okay with that, sure, but it's probably not going to be something that is necessarily going to sustain you to exercise for a long period of time. I'm like being a bit careful here because, well, for some people it does actually. That external motivation actually does get them to continue exercising. But I just want to make sure that it's not messing with your mental health and you're not thinking, well, if I don't lose weight or if I don't buff up in this certain way that I can't be confident and no one will ever like me, no one will ever love me. You got to be careful with those kind of thoughts. And also, if you are someone like me that's in a body that doesn't look like the bodies that I see on television screens and on social media, as far as what is currently believed to be like the societal ideal of what a female body looks like, it can be really demotivating to put a lot of energy into exercising for the way your body looks if it's never going to look the way that society thinks your body should look. And so I'll be honest with you, what motivated me to exercise a lot in the past was how I looked. But I realized that no matter the amount of effort that I put in, I'm just never going to have a body that's, I don't want to put out numbers here, but that's, that's a particular size, or that looks like Kim Kardashian, or that looks like Emma Stone, or that looks like whoever the F else, right? I'm never going to have a body that looks like that, regardless of how much exercise effort I put in. First of all, because I'm getting older, and it's harder to, your body changes as you get older. So, and someone who's in a larger body also, if we're just using like looking a certain way so society will value us as our motivator to exercise, society's always going to find another reason to not value you. That's why you have to always value yourself from within first. And if you're always chasing the acceptance of something external to you, that's a game that never ends. Because as much as you'll find acceptance in one circle, you'll find other people that don't accept you. So just be careful, I would say, of using the external motivator of what other people think of your body. Because at the end of the day, this is your body. And that's a joyful statement. This is your body, and you get to do with it whatever you want to do with it. And at the end of the day, you have to live with it. And no matter what your body looks like, some people are going to like it and some people aren't going to like it. And that's their fucking problem, not your fucking problem. So I get that like looking a certain way is a motivator for physical activity. And I get that a lot of people use that. I just say, just be careful with it. Be careful with it because of the mental health implications of that. And be careful if you're using exercise as a way of like fitting into societal ideals so you'll feel more accepted. That's not the new weight paradigm. The new weight paradigm is you're already awesome enough. And you don't need to change anything about yourself to be worthy, just like the sun doesn't need to change anything of itself to be amazing. The sun is the sun. You are you, and you are amazing, right? We don't have to change ourselves to be worthy. I know that society's going to value you differently depending on what you look like. I get that. But we can't live our lives just based on what society has for ideals for ourselves. That's never going to lead to that feeling of completeness, of confidence, for instance, that a lot of us are seeking. I have a lot more to say about that, but let's just leave it there for now. Another example of extrinsic motivators are like likes or comments or praise from others. So if you're just exercising so you can post it on your social media, so some people like it or some people comment on it, or so you get that dopamine hit, right, in the moment, you get that like, oh my gosh, this feels so good because people are liking me and they're praising me. I'm just telling you that goes away. And that's not going to help you exercise for the rest of your life, probably. And again, we're still looking at other people. That happiness, that joy from exercise is always about how other people view us. And again, that's not necessarily going to sustain exercise behavior, and also we open ourselves up to messing with our mental health a bit. Okay? So those are extrinsic motivators. I want you to also consider some intrinsic motivators of exercise. I want you to also think about like, how can you really find the joyful element of exercise, of movement, of physical activity so it becomes part of your life? How can you find a way to move your body so it feels good and you can focus on that good feeling and try to come back to that good feeling? That's what keeps me coming back to exercise, is how good I feel afterwards and actually during it too. I love pushing my body, right? I have different forms of exercise that I do, but I freaking love a high intensity challenge. Now that's not for everyone. For other people, they feel amazing when they step out in nature and they go for a nature walk. It doesn't have to be a long one, right? But they get into nature, they spend some time down by the creek, they spend some time by a lake or the ocean, in the forest, and they're moving their body, they're being with nature, and it feels amazing, right? So there's the nature aspect, but there's also like an exercise high. And that exercise high feels so amazing. And when you feel it, I want you to double down on it. I want you to be like, oh my God, this feels amazing. Because that's a feeling that you want to kind of keep coming back to. That's an intrinsic motivator because you're motivated by something internal and you don't need anyone else to give you that. You can get that yourself. Another intrinsic motivator for physical activity, for movement, is what it does for your mental health. There's been some days where I am not in a great place mentally, and I get out in nature. I was doing some outrigger canoeing for a while. That was so fun. I get on the water. I go for a swim. I get on my Peloton. It changes my day immediately. Sometimes I'm like, nothing else is working. The only thing I can do is move my body to help me feel better, to help, process some of the emotions that I'm feeling. Dancing, moving around, all of these things can be really good for our mental health. Another intrinsic motivator. Physical activity, also to the same aspect, is a bit of the stress management. It can help us to manage some of those stressful experiences that we have of being a human. And it's a bit of me time too, especially if, let's say, you're a parent and you are running around after kids all day, and that can be really exhausting and really feel like you're living your life for other people, because you are, because you're in charge of these tiny, precious, lovely humans, but they take up a lot of time and energy and effort. Unfortunately, society doesn't look like too positively on like just taking rest for the sake of taking rest. But you can disguise that rest within physical activity. So maybe some of your me time is like, oh, I'm going for a little hike. And people are like, well, she's getting activity, so she's still doing something, because we're so obsessed with people doing, always doing. But anyways, that's another story too. But maybe this is your me time. This is the time that you take to go to work, to get home from school, to spend some time in nature, to walk your dog or your cat or your parakeet, whatever you're walking these days, right? That's time for you. That's an intrinsic motivator too. So how do you make physical activity your me time, right? Or treat it like the spa. Treat it like, this is my time for me. This is where I get back to myself. I'm someone that can really get influenced by other people and other people's thoughts and feelings. And when I'm in that situation, I've actually been around a lot of people lately, and it's too much for me because I get other people's voices in my head, and then I don't hear my own voice. I don't hear my own thoughts. And then I get it messes with my mental health. So in those times, I need an outlet. I need an outlet for myself that helps me get back to myself, gets me away from other people, right? And sometimes I love challenging physical activity for that reason too, is that sometimes it just helps me clear all the thoughts in my head. I'm so concentrated on physical activity that I can't think about some of the other things going on. And it kind of depends on the person, but hopefully I've given you some intrinsic motivators that maybe you can start playing with, see what resonated with you to help building your own intrinsic motivation towards physical activity. So to summarize this section, some questions to ask yourself. Number 1, do you want to exercise for yourself, or is it because of something or someone else? For yourself, intrinsic motivation. For other people, or for something else like weight loss, that's more extrinsic motivation. How do you start to exercise for yourself? How can you find enjoyment in movement? Again, does that mean we have to move away from the gym paradigm, the gym as exercise paradigm, and move towards, right, how do I move my body in a way that's enjoyable? Maybe that's just dancing. Maybe that is going for a walk. Maybe that is going for a swim, right? Maybe that is playing pickleball. How can you find enjoyment in movement? And what is intrinsically rewarding about that exercise? Not just the weight you may lose, maybe, maybe in a few months, in a few weeks, in a few months. Is that the only motivator? Or is there something that you can get today from exercise? I will leave, when I exercise and I didn't want to, I will leave that, let's say the bike or after my hike or whatever else, I will leave that and be like, yes, I fucking did it. I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And I feel amazing, right? How can you double down on those feelings that feel amazing? Also, as far as the competency construct here, what are you good at? Are you a little competitive? Does competition help you motivate yourself? You got to be careful with competition. It's not great for everyone. For some people, that can be something that can be motivating. It's a little bit more external, right? So maybe something else that you're good at is like, what skills do you have? I'm a very mental person, so I like forms of physical activity that I have to think. I used to do kickboxing for a while, and what I loved about kickboxing is how much your mind has to be on it, right? And your skill building. And I love that you could start at a very low skill level and build up from there. So what are you good at? Maybe it's not kickboxing. Maybe it's not swimming. Maybe it's not going to the gym. Maybe again, it's walking. Never discount walking. Just as a side note for weight management, which I know is an external motivator, but nevertheless, there's something called a National Weight Control Registry, which is a registry of people that have lost more than 30 pounds and kept it off for 5 years. The number one reported form of physical activity in that group that helped them keep the weight off is walking for an hour a day. So never discount the power of walking for health benefits, yes, but also for weight management. Just a side note that study was very skewed towards women and towards highly educated women, so take that with a grain of salt. But my point is that never discount walking as a form of exercise. Okay? Other questions to ask yourself: what movements do you like doing with others? Why do you like doing them with others? And what freedom do you need with exercise? Do you need a set schedule? Because that helps you feel more scheduled in the other aspects of your life? Or do you need absolutely no schedule with exercise? Do you want to do what other people are doing and just follow the same routine as other people? Sure, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Or do you want to find your own routine with the form of exercise that you like doing? Okay, so questions to consider as far as self-determination theory and exercise motivation. Now, I also want to talk about another theory that kind of speaks to this as well. And this is something called acceptance and commitment therapy. And there's going to be overlap between these two. But acceptance and commitment therapy, what I like about it is that it acknowledges that your thoughts are sometimes going to compromise your desire to act in a certain way, right? So the goal of acceptance and commitment therapy is to change your relationship with unwanted thoughts, feelings, and body sensations while committing to a personally desirable goal. Okay? So for instance, out of self-determination theory, you might commit to being active. Maybe you found something that you feel competent at, that you got to choose yourself, and that helps you feel more connected to others, and that you enjoy doing. But then you're doing that for a few months and it falls off. And then you have a bad week, you have a crazy week at work, you go on vacation, your environment changes, COVID happens, like there's something that happens, or it doesn't even have to be something that happens, but let's say you fall off that behavior change that you had. What a lot of us have a tendency to do in those moments is to self-sabotage ourselves with negative thoughts. So we might say like, see, I can't do it. See, I suck. See, I knew I wasn't good at exercise. I knew I couldn't stay motivated. Just like the last time, I'm having the same reaction because I'm whatever. And these negative thoughts, like, they're hard to control, and they're gonna be there, right? That's acceptance and commitment therapy and just ACT in general, is that like unwanted thoughts are gonna come in. Behavior change is not linear, that you start here, you start at A and you go to B very easily, right? You are asking your brain to change. You are asking the neural pathways that determine your behavior to change. That is costly for your brain to do. And your brain, working through the mind, the construct of the mind, is going to sometimes send you thoughts that are going to say, actually, you shouldn't be doing this. Actually, just give up. Just go back. It's easier to go back to what you were doing before. So how do you deal with those thoughts while still committing to a desirable action, right? So, and actually, you're not trying to change those thoughts. You're not trying to change those thoughts. In acceptance and commitment therapy, you're letting those thoughts come in and you're just kind of observing them. And you're being like, oh, here comes those old patterns of thinking again. Those old patterns of thinking that are telling me that I can't do this. But those are just stories that I tell myself. Those are just stories, or those are just my thoughts. I am not my thoughts. I am the person that observes my thoughts. And it's funny, I laugh because, I was talking about ACT in my obesity and weight management course, and I had these students do these reflections every week, and one of the students wrote, a student from Malaysia wrote, I really like the concept of ACT. It sounds a lot like Buddhism. And I'm like, of course it does, because it takes a lot of the principles from, these Eastern religions, where it's, we are not our thoughts. We have to separate ourselves from those. And when we identify with our thoughts, that's something that can cause a lot of suffering in our lives. That doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist to follow ACT. It's just like there's similar principles in this, right? So in ACT, it's kind of two parts to it, right? You accept your thoughts and emotions, three parts to it. You accept your thoughts and emotions. You accept that you're going to have setbacks. You accept that you're going to have thoughts that are going to be self-defeating. You're going to have thoughts and emotions and days where you don't want to, that are going to cause you to not want to do anything. You accept that because you are human and that is part of the human experience. But in act, you accept those thoughts as there and you observe them, but then you're like, oh, I see you thoughts. I see you there trying to self-sabotage me. All right, I see ya. I see what you're trying to do. But actually, I'm committed to these other things. Actually, I freaking love exercise. Actually, I feel amazing when I'm active. Actually, I get to spend time with my friends when I'm active, and those feel amazing, and I value those things. And because I value those things, I accept that my mind's gonna mind, the monkey mind's gonna monkey mind, it's gonna ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, it's gonna chatter, because that's what your mind does. I accept that it's gonna do this, but here's what I'm actually about. Here's what I actually want to move towards. This is the value direction I want to take. And again, you can see how like self-determination theory and ACT kind of work together. Okay, so there are some key components with ACT, and I'm not obviously going to summarize the whole thing, but just some things to think about is that in ACT, it's a lot around awareness and being aware of what's happening, aware of the emotions that are coming up, aware of the thoughts that are coming up, and not trying to be like, shut up thoughts, stop thinking this thoughts, and also not being like, yeah, I guess my thoughts are right, I suck at this. But with that presence and awareness, you're like, oh, I feel uncomfortable right now, or this is an uncomfortable feeling, or these are thoughts that are showing that I'm uncomfortable with this change. But I actually can do hard things. I actually can do things that are uncomfortable. And even though my thoughts are going to scream, they're going to scream, your mind's going to scream, just go back to doing nothing. Just like lay on the couch a bit longer. Just skip exercise after work, right? And granted, if you're tired, don't exercise, do you. But, your thoughts are going to tell you to like limit the change or not change. Your thoughts are going to help you to stay where you're at. That's what your thoughts do. That's what thoughts often do. They're like, here's the status quo, I want to stay there. But if you want to change behavior, you got to get into uncomfortable land. You have to be uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable to start exercising. It is uncomfortable to challenge the body to exercise more. There is discomfort in your muscles. There's discomfort afterwards. It's all typically, as long as you're not pushing yourself too hard, for the greater good, but it's uncomfortable. And it's also uncomfortable for your brain to do new things, right? So part of ACT is like, oh, this is uncomfortable. My brain is screaming at me that this is uncomfortable, but that's just part of how the brain works. And I actually care about this new direction I want to head in. And that's great. Those are going to be there. Those thoughts are going to be there, but this is what I value. I love exercise. I love how it makes me feel. I love how it changes my relationship with my family. I love that being healthy and fit helps me run around with my kids, helps me keep up with the hiking group that I want to keep up with. I love those things. So even though my brain's saying I can't do this, this is the value direction I want to take, and I'm committed to that. Okay? So part of Act 2 is like this concept of diffusion. It's, the observer. So with your thoughts, the thoughts that are like, you can't do this, you have too much other stuff to do, you don't have time to exercise, you don't have whatever else, you're not good enough for exercise. Those thoughts, which you're probably going to have, you diffuse them by like separating yourself from them. You like move away from them a bit. I don't want to identify with the thought that says I suck, which is a thought that I still have. Or the thought that says I'm fat and ugly, which is a thought I still have sometimes. That thought still comes up and it infuriates me, but it's nevertheless true. If I wasn't practicing some of the concepts found in ACT, I would be like, yes, I'm fat and ugly. I'm having the thought I'm fat and ugly, so I'm fat and ugly. Okay? But in ACT, it's like, oh, I'm having the thought that I'm fat and ugly. And then another step back is you're like, I'm observing myself having the thought that I am fat and ugly, right? You're like distancing yourself from your thoughts because that's just your mind, and your mind isn't exact. I would argue your mind is not you, right? It's a tool of your brain. Your mind is a tool of your brain, okay? But it's not you, okay? But they're a reflection of our experience, a reflection of our old stories, of our own narratives, but they're not who we are. So we want to distance ourselves from that. So when I have the thought that I'm fat, right? I can say, I'm observing myself having this thought, and this thought makes me want to feel down on myself, but I'm not giving that thought power. I'm not letting it rule my day. Because first of all, let's say I am in a larger body, that doesn't devalue me as a human. And I'm still valuable no matter what size my body is, A. And B, if I am fat, maybe certain people don't like me, but a lot of other people love me no matter what I look like, right? And maybe that's a little bit external, but I'm fundamentally worthy no matter this thought that's just coming up. And I'm not going to let that thought determine my day, because part of my value, part of what I'm committed to do is living each day in the body that I have with confidence and with joy. And I'm not going to let these thoughts that still surface sometimes dictate my experience from day to day. Because I value being happy, and I value food, and I value movement, and I value enjoying my mental health too, right? So in ACT, we kind of distance ourselves from the thoughts that are there to self-sabotage, okay? And we let ourselves be a little bit psychologically flexible with the kind of thoughts we have. We're not always going to have positive thoughts, and so that's just kind of part of being human, okay? But part of ACT as well is like, okay, I have these thoughts, they're gonna try to pull me back, but I'm committed to the changes I'm trying to make. Okay, so a question to ask yourself when you have those thoughts is this thought helpful? Is this an old story? The fat and ugly story, that's like when did that start? 12 for me? That story that I kept repeating to myself forever, it's still there, it's still in the background. It's so conditioned in. That's an old story that I'm just not buying into anymore, right? And another question to ask yourself is, do these thoughts help me get in line with the values I have? Or are these thoughts trying to self-sabotage me? And you don't want to be mad at them. They're just there. You're just observing. It's like, oh, I'm having the thoughts. It's like leaves on a stream. They're just like floating down, right? It's just like, oh, look at the leaves floating down. Look at my thoughts having this script. Look at my thoughts having this story. You are observing them. They are not you. Okay? So then the other part of ACT is not just like, don't let your thoughts self-sabotage you. The other part of it is like getting in line with your values. And this is intrinsic motivation again, right? Why do you want to exercise? Why is it important to you? What do you truly want in life? And how can exercise help you align with that? What do I truly want in life? I want to enjoy the freaking shit out of my life. I want to have an epic life where I travel, where I eat delicious foods, where I move about, where I like have strong relationships, where I feel good in my body, right? And physical activity is something that helps me achieve these things that I truly want, right? Why is exercise important to you? How does it make you feel? How does it change relationship with your body? Right? What does it help you be able to do more easily? How does it help you manage your health? Right? Why is it important to you? What do you want your life to stand for? I want my life to stand for joy. I want my life to stand for, I want to be a model of someone that's not in a typical, like, societally approved body of what it's supposed to look like, that's living unapologetically joyfully, regardless of what other people may or may not think about her body. That's what I stand for, and being active helps me achieve that, right? Who do you want to be? And what feelings and perspectives do you want to have when you look back on your life? This one's a big one for me, right? Let's say it's almost over, this life of yours, this beautiful life of yours. How do you want to look back on it? What do you want to be proud of for yourself? One of the things I always think about is like there's this nurse, Bonnie Ware, who used to work in palliative care. She worked with people that were on their deathbeds, and she wrote this book about the 5 deathbed regrets. And one of the ones that always really stood out to me is, I wish I had the courage, deathbed regrets, I wish I had the courage to live a life for me instead of a life that others expected for me. She said it better. But I wish I had the courage to live a life in line with what I wanted instead of in a life of what other people want for me. I want to live a life that's not about just trying to fit into other people's standards of what they think I should or shouldn't look like or what I should or shouldn't do. I want to live a life that feels really good. I want to live a life that's in line with my values. I want to live a life where I can be like joyfully moving about this world and experiencing the freaking beauty of this world in the mountains, in the ocean, in the forest, with animals, with other people. Physical activity helps me do that. I don't want to look back on my life and feel that I lost opportunities because I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have because perhaps I didn't have the fitness that allowed me to do that. That's important to me, and I'm cautious with my words here because I don't want to be judgmental of anyone either. We're all in a different place, right? But wherever you are, you can change, and wherever you are, you can improve. And something that might help you find this internal motivation is figuring out what values are important to you, not anyone else, not me. Who cares? Like, what do I know about you? You're the only one that knows about you. You're the only one that knows what's valuable to you. So how do you use that to align your values with your behaviors? Because that feels amazing, right? As a side note, one of the things that's helped me motivated to keep doing this podcast is that this podcast is in line with my values. It's in line with what I want to do in this world and the mark I want to leave in this world. And before, when I tried to do things like put out videos or whatever, were all about like people liking things or commenting them or having ever many subscribers or whatever else, that never kept me motivated. Now that I'm motivated by like, no, this is what I want to leave on this world. This is the experience I want to have. I have to get these thoughts out of my head so I can hopefully help some people, maybe, but also so I can leave a mark on the world in the way I want to leave it. Right? That is something that is intrinsically motivating for me to do this podcast, but hopefully it gives you some ideas about like what can be intrinsically motivating for you to keep moving in the direction that you want to move towards. Another question that you might want to ask yourself with respect to behavior change and to keeping you motivated to, keep engaging in physical activity is, who are you open to becoming? Because you are who you think you are right now. I don't know if you are who you think you are, but you think you are someone right now. That is true. Okay? But that's kind of made up. Who you think you are. Again, maybe a little esoteric here too, but like identity is made up, right? So I can identify with like who I want to identify with, or like as whom I want to identify with. Right? You get to make up your identity, but sometimes our old identities are keeping us stuck. So my old identity of being a fat girl, which is what I told myself my whole life, kept me stuck in the behaviors that were part of that identity. Now that I consider myself an active person, a fit person, a person that values health, a person that values exercise, that identity, which I also made up, right? Which I align with. I'm like, oh, I like that one. I like that identity. That identity keeps me coming back to physical activity. That identity keeps me coming back to fruits and vegetables and eating well and moderating my food intake and managing my cravings, etc. Right? Because that is part of my identity. So you get to make up your own identity, right? What are the components of the ideal identity for yourself? Is it I'm an athlete? Is it I am an active person? Is it I am the kind of person who? So for instance, I am the kind of person who always takes the stairs. I am the kind of person who likes to walk instead of driving if it's a short distance. I am the kind of person who takes walking meetings instead of just sitting at my desk and doing a Zoom meeting. Can you use that script? I am the kind of person who, or I am an athlete. I am an active person. Can you use that script to help create a new identity for yourself? right? And then again, that becomes really intrinsically motivating because you're trying to align your behaviors with your values. And one last question just to finish this off that I think is important to ask yourself or to consider is, as always, have you consulted with your body? Have you thought about your body in your desire to exercise? So how does, for instance, your body like to move? Does your body like more lower intensity types of movement or moderate intensity types of movement? Perhaps like walking or yoga, maybe even Pilates, you could argue, can be done a little bit more moderately. Or do you like more high intensity type things, right? Does your body feel best after that? So for instance, I'm actually someone that whose body really loves like a challenge, but I can go a bit too far too. So sometimes I over challenge my body. I do a little bit too much high intensity exercise, and then it doesn't feel great. So how does your body like to move? How does your body want to move? When does it like to move as well? Are you someone that has a lot more energy in the beginning of the day? Or are you someone that has more energy at the end of the day? You know, sometimes they talk about like habit stacking and like when stacking your behaviors in the beginning of the day can help you stay motivated to exercise. Sure. But some people's bodies just feel really tired in the morning, right? So if your body feels really tired in the morning, or you don't have a lot of energy in the morning, maybe the afternoon is the best time for you to actually move. And maybe that also works for your schedule too. Where does your body like to move? Does it prefer to be in like an open environment, perhaps like outside in like valleys? Maybe it likes to move near the ocean. Maybe it likes to move like in a gym setting or like in a studio setting, like a yoga studio or a Pilates studio. Where does it feel? Where do you feel the best? Where does your body feel the best, right? What movements make your body feel amazing? And something else to really consider here too is you have to really be on, if you are trying to change your exercise relationship or trying to change your exercise behavior, you're starting from somewhere right now, right? I'm not someone that could be a competitive hockey player, for instance, right? If I tried to right now, I don't know why that came to mind first. If I try to go out and like play competitive hockey, you know, I'm going to destroy my body because it is not ready for that, right? You are starting from wherever you're starting from. And it's important for you not to challenge your body too much right at the start in any way you're trying to like improve. A general rule of thumb is to like start from where you're at, start at a place where you're like 80 to 90% sure you can do, right? So that might be going for a walk, or maybe that's like walking on a treadmill for 20 minutes or running on a treadmill for 3 minutes, then taking a 3-minute walking break, running for 3 minutes, taking a 3-minute walking break. What are you 90% sure you can start with? And then once you've started, activation energy, you're already going, then you can play from there. And a general rule of thumb is you don't want to overload too much. You want to challenge the body, yes, but you don't want to challenge it by like upping, like doubling the amount you can do from week to week, doubling the intensity or doubling the load or doubling the amount of times you're active. Okay, so start where it feels comfortable right now. And then I would say like, then you can start playing with like intensity. You can play with like resistance. You can play with like the amount of times you exercise or the length of time you exercise. But I'd say play with it by like changing one of those things by like 10% a week, right? If that. You do want to challenge, if you want to see improvements in fitness, you do have to challenge the body, something called progressive overload, or just overload. But progressive overload means that you're like progressively changing things and upping within a reasonable amount to build that fitness that can maybe help you feel more like an active person, or to give you a challenge that again makes you feel amazing, right? Or to maybe help improve those health markers you're looking to improve as well. Okay? So all of this still part of the new weight paradigm. All of this messaging is still part of the new weight paradigm, where of course, again, to remember the new weight paradigm, we start from a place of fundamental self-worth. So whether you do or don't exercise, you are fundamentally worthy. Wherever your exercise capacity is right now, your movement capacity is right now, you are amazing. And there's nothing wrong with you. Okay? It's all about finding your best body. Maybe that's with a weight-based approach. Maybe it's not. Maybe you want to focus on your weight. Maybe you don't. Totally up to you, right? But it's about finding the body that allows you to live most optimally. Finding your best size and using your body as a friend in that relationship, in that pursuit, right? Not being mad at your body for not conforming to societal standard that your body had no business trying to conform to in the first place. And actually using feedback from your body, like, this is too painful, or I'm really tired after this, or I feel amazing after this. Oh my gosh, I have so much energy after this. That is key feedback from your body that you can help to change, tweak, right, your current behaviors to get to a place that's going to make you feel the best. Right? And it's all about finding your own unique way. I haven't told you, like, this is the type of exercise you need to do to stay motivated, because that's ridiculous. What I've told you is focus on intrinsic motivation, accept that your thoughts might be self-sabotaging, but commit to a valued action direction that is in line with your values and who you want to be and your identity, and that makes you feel amazing, right? But that's all about figuring it out yourself. Right? And taking this approach, like I said, of joyful experimentation, like, let's try shit out. Try things out. Like, what have you always wanted to try? What are you 90% sure that you could do today? Let's try it out. Let's look at the feedback. How did it go? What worked? What didn't? All right. How do we change that? How do we build from there? Right? And then part of the new weight paradigm too is really about appetite mastery, but I would say that has a little less to do with what we're talking about today. But that is something that can help us manage our weight if that is one of the external motivators that we're using. So anyways, as always, I'm going to tell you that your body is amazing. Your body is like a freaking masterpiece. It is incredible what it does every day to keep you alive and keep you here. Even for you to be able to listen to this and understand some of the things I'm saying, and to, like, see me if you're watching on YouTube, like, the amount of processes that have to go on in your body for all that to be possible, it is incredible. The human mind can't possibly figure out the human body, let alone the human brain. Okay, our bodies are amazing, and no matter where we're starting from, right, we all deserve to feel good in our bodies. And that doesn't mean they have to look a certain way. But we can work with our body the way it is and build a new relationship with our body where it helps us live our freaking lives and makes our lives actually better. That is the goal. That is the goal state. Yeah. So, as always, I am Deanna Bedoya. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you took something from this. If you do like this content, give me a little extrinsic motivation to keep doing it by liking or subscribing or giving a good review on Spotify. What else can you do? You can always write a comment. That also helps as well. And if you're looking for more guidance, I am available for coaching as well. If you need a little bit more guidance in this area, I'd love to help you out with that. But anyways, you're awesome. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.